Hello, I'm David Munro. I'm Surrey's Police and Crime Commissioner. Could I welcome you to this roadshow? I'm afraid we're not able to be with you in person as we are most years, but I hope we can put over what we want to say and above all to hear your comments and queries and questions. I'm going to speak for 5 minutes or so and then hand over to Chief Constable Gavin Stevens. And then lastly will be the Borough Commander for Waverley, Inspector Sam Adcock. And then the most important part, which is to hear what you've got to say. So that's me, Police and Crime Commissioner for Surrey, David Munro. My primary job as an elected person, you elected me 4.5 years ago. My primary job is to hold Surrey Police to account on behalf of you, the residents. So it's crucial that I hear from you as to what you think has gone right, what you think has gone wrong, and what you think could be improved for the future, which is why these sessions are so important. I think it's right to take pride in what we've achieved in Surrey Police. Nobody's complacent at all, of course. We all know there's more to go. But I'd just like to point out some achievements. First of all, after a decade of very painful cuts, there are now more officers and staff serving Surrey's communities. Last year, we recruited well over 100 people, mostly officers. They're not all out there on our streets and communities quite yet, because it takes some time to recruit and then trained, but I promise you all of those will be there very shortly, and the recruitment programme is on schedule. I'm glad to say that Surrey residents basically are very satisfied with what we do. We're number 7 nationally. Of course, we would like to be number 1, but we have improved over last year, and I hope we can improve further. As I say, we are not at all complacent. We've always got more to do. But I'm particularly pleased that victim satisfaction remains high. Over 2/3 of the people that we look after as victims are satisfied that in that very difficult times for them, we are doing the best we can. And that's really, really good to hear. We're going to be asking Surrey residents and taxpayers to pay a little bit more extra in their precept, and I'm going to be going into more detail in a moment. But I think it's important to realise what actually the precept rise last year actually achieved. And as you say, as I said before, Surrey Police, after a decade of reductions, is actually putting more people out there where it matters on our streets and communities. And you'll see over 150 officers and staff. Staff, by the way, means frontline staff, people like our police community support officers. And especially lots of officers at local level, and I'm sure Borough Inspector will go into more detail on that. And behind the scenes, but pretty important as well, we've made substantial improvements in, for instance, we've created a problem-solving unit, so to help our clear-up rate, our solve rate, which we think we can do better at. And in other areas, you'll see that in this very difficult time through the coronavirus pandemic, we've helped lots of organisations with nearly £500,000, and I'm particularly pleased that in partnership with others, we've helped to provide another refuge space for women who are survivors of domestic abuse. Unfortunately, domestic abuse over the last year has gone up, and we must really keep on top of it. And you'll see other things we're doing there as well. So this is the ask. The government have allowed us to increase the police precept by 5.5%. That's equivalent to £15 a year on a Band D property, or as you see, £1.25 a month. And for that, we are going to be able to put more officers and staff on our streets to help you to prevent crime and to increase the crime solving rate. That will be in addition to the police uplift nationally, Boris's 20,000, which will also bring more police officers into the force. The consultation in Waverley has been going for a couple of weeks now and closes soon. If you haven't already responded to our proposals, then please do so. All the details are on our website. I would like to end with just one thing, though. We're passing through some very turbulent times at the moment, and the pandemic has hit us all very hard indeed. Hopefully, it's the last lap, but we can never be sure. I think Surrey residents have done magnificently over the last year. They've really stepped up to the mark. They've helped to keep us all safe, and the vast majority of residents have obeyed the rules. However, unfortunately, there has been a very small minority of people who are still flouting the rules. It's a matter, literally, of life and death. And my message to them is, please obey the rules. We all know what they are. We don't want to have to enforce, but we will if we have to. Right, I'll now hand over to Gavin Stevens, the professional head of Surrey Police.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you all for joining us this evening to hear what we've been doing across Surrey Police and for us to hear your views too. I'm really grateful for you taking the time out, and what a year it's been for us all. But even at that time of uncertainty, I think it's really important to plan ahead. If you came along to one of these events from last year, then you gave us a clear view of what you wanted from your police service, and we listened very carefully to that. And in the early part of the year, before the pandemic, I also consulted with officers and staff and volunteers from across the organisation to seek their views too. And we started to put together our plans for the next 5 years. And then, of course, we declared a major incident when the pandemic struck, and the planning was put on hold for a while. We had some respite in the summer when I was able to dust off what we'd done and go out to all of the partner organisations that we work with to get their views too. And then in September, we launched our plans for the next 5 years. In fact, our commitments to you, our communities, commitments to the future of the force, and some commitments to each other. And what you told us loud and clear was that you wanted a county that not only was safe, but a county that felt safe too, as a resident, as a local business, as a visitor. So I want to come on and talk about those commitments in a little bit more detail, but before I do so, I want to echo the words of the Commissioner and pay tribute to our communities, to all of the other public services that we've worked with, the volunteers, for doing everything humanly possible to help us police this pandemic. Of course, much of the media focus on the police response to the pandemic has been around the enforcement and the issuing of penalty notices. But all colleagues in policing know that that's been a tiny, tiny fraction of what we've been doing. We've been active participants in the Surrey Local Resilience Forum, helping with the planning and logistics of all of the things that need to happen to help us respond to the emergency. Our police community support officers and local neighbourhood teams have visited many thousands of vulnerable residents across the county. Our police cadets have helped with food parcel deliveries. We've had officers come out of retirement to deal with some of the difficult tasks that we've had to face, including, of course, providing support to the many hundreds of families that have been sadly bereaved because of the pandemic. So I really do give thanks to the support the communities have shown. In an independent survey that was done during the first wave of the lockdown, just under 92% of residents said they had confidence in their local policing team, and I'm really grateful for that support. So I'll commit to keeping you updated on the progress that we make against this 5-year plan every quarter. And we did the first update early in January, so if you've not had an opportunity to see that, please do look back on our social media feeds to get an update. So moving to the first set of commitments, the most important set, the commitments to you in our communities. I said last year that I wanted us to be a more preventative organisation, and I'm pleased to say, with tremendous hard work, we in Surrey are the 6th safest county in England and Wales, and the safest county in the South East. That doesn't come easily. We have a significant border with the capital city, we have Europe's busiest motorway network, we have proximity to 2 major international airports. So I'm really grateful for the hard works of the team in local neighbourhoods to help us maintain that position of a really safe county. Turning to the work that we do to protect our communities, we try to lead the way here too, and just one example of that, Operation Signature is our work that tackles romance fraud. You might not think it's a big issue, but it is. 27 cases last year, resulting in a total financial loss of over £280,000 for those victims. And in that operation, the work of Surrey Police was picked up by the City of London and advocated as good practice nationally. Moving to the work that we do to pursue offenders, again, just a few examples. In dealing with drugs, we've had Operation Centurion, where we've worked together with the Metropolitan Police and other police services nationally, tackling county line drugs dealers, doing detailed analysis of communications to take out at source the network and also the supply on our local streets at the same time. That's an operation that continues and has really reduced the harmful effect of drugs on the streets in Surrey. In terms of keeping you and your loved ones safe on the Surrey roads, we've had Operation Tramline. That gives us a HGV eye view of dangerous driving on the roads, with over 305 offenders dealt with, keeping our roads safer. And more recently, Operation Rally, together with British Transport Police, tackling those criminals that blight the fabric of our county through damage and theft. Maybe that's theft of metal from precious buildings, maybe it's theft of scrap metal, dumping of materials on the road. In that operation alone, we dealt with 31 offences, including licensing and immigration issues, and stopped over 151 suspicious vehicles. But of course, there's always more that we can do, and our focus for this year, as the Commissioner has mentioned, is to solve more crime. If you're a victim in Surrey, the chances of having your crime solved are not high enough, and we want to do better for you on that. Turning next to our commitments to each other, the officers, staff and volunteers that make up Surrey Police. I'm a huge believer that what an organisation feels like to work for has a direct relationship to the quality of service that we give to our communities. We're an organisation that wants to be as professional as we can possibly be. As part of the Everyday Sexism project, we held a live debate tackling the issues that female colleagues can face in the workplace every day. We did a campaign called Not in My Force, where male colleagues spoke out against this behaviour. These are the sort of the issues that Surrey Police does not shy away from, so we've become a welcoming organisation for all. Of course, we also want to be an inclusive organisation, one that represents the communities that we serve. And up until November of last year, we welcomed 268 new colleagues to Surrey Police. And back in October, we had our biggest attestation that we've ever done, swearing in 75 new officers in the same day. In addition to that, we welcomed to Surrey 33 transferees, many of whom were coming back to Surrey having tried policing elsewhere, 56 police community support officers, and also 301 police staff colleagues. So the organisation is growing to provide a better police service for you. And of course, we're proud too. We celebrated Black History Month, welcoming back Surrey Police's first black officer, Dr. Victor Elisa. Vic took part in an online debate which was attended by police services from around the country, and the exhibition that we produced went out into your communities so you could engage in that too. And of course, as ever, there's more that we can do. So our focus for this year will be to maintain those exceptionally high standards of recruitment and selection and training and continuous development so that we can continue to give you an exceptional quality of service. Finally, I want to turn to the commitments that we've made to the future of the organisation. If you came along to one of these events in person last year, you'll have heard me talk about how I want the organisation to be more preventative. And the Commissioner mentioned our problem-solving team. That team currently oversees over 350 live problem-solving cases. They are cases where officers are trying their hardest with others to get to the root causes of crime, to design out crime at source to keep the county safe. You will have also heard me say that I wanted to do as much work as we possibly could in partnership. Policing is not something that we can do alone. Just looking at the work of our Special Constabulary and volunteers, the Specials gave 43,000 hours of service this year. Many colleagues may have been furloughed from other organisations during the pandemic and chose to give their time to policing, and we're ever so grateful for that. And of course, we've worked with a whole range of other organisations in the public sector, the private sector and voluntary too. And I'm determined that those new partnerships will endure beyond the pandemic. So what we've learned from working together will continue to have benefit. And finally, I believe it's one of my key responsibilities as Chief to get the full potential out of the organisation. That's not just to make sure that it's a great place to work and that people can learn new skills to give good service, but that we get the best from our technology too. And this year, we've introduced a brand new body-worn video system, a new system to manage all of our digital evidence, where you can directly upload material that you may have to help our investigations. We've launched our Digital 101 service, giving 24/7, 365-day-a-year access to us online with the same quality that you would expect as what you would contact us on the phone. And so as not to get rusty, I've tried to keep my skills up too, completing my TASER course as well, so that whenever possible I can get out with the teams on the streets to help them keep you safe. And on that note, I hand over to the Borough Commander for Waverley, Inspector Sam Adcock.
Thank you, sir. I'm Inspector Sam Adcock, and I'm the new Waverley Borough Commander. I've been in post since September 2020, having come from the Force Control Room. I've been busy over the last couple of months, getting to know the area, meeting our partner agencies, and understanding the issues that we face as a borough. Waverley is part of Surrey Police's Western Division, along with Guildford, Surrey Heath and Woking. Waverley is the largest borough in Surrey, and the policing team covers over 133 square miles and has approximately 125,000 residents. The borough is divided into 4 main areas: Godalming, Farnham, Hazelmere and Cranley, and they cover the main towns and surrounding villages. We've been very fortunate over the last couple of months, and we've benefited from the uplift that the force has seen. I've therefore been able to double our neighbourhood officers and our youth engagement officers, and can now dedicate a police officer to each of the 4 areas to work alongside a team of police community support officers. So I wanted to take this opportunity to show you your Waverley policing team. The current Safer Neighbourhoods team is made up of myself as Borough Commander, 2 sergeants, 5 police constables and 10 police community support officers. They work with our partner agencies and the community to put long-term problem-solving plans in place to tackle issues in your neighbourhood. As you can see, the teams are split into 4. They are dedicated to that area, and this allows them to really concentrate their time and effort into understanding the people, places and groups within that community and tackle the issues bespoke to that area. The Safer Neighbourhood team also has a number of specialist officers within it who offer support and guidance in their specialism. The youth engagement officers, which have recently been increased from 1 officer to 2, work closely with children and young people in an effort to divert them away from the criminal justice system. They work closely with our local schools, and your children may very well have seen them in the schools, or being part of the many school presentations that they provide, from internet safety to knife crime and county lines. We also have an antisocial behaviour specialist, Kevin Sinclair, who works with the team to provide advice and assistance to deal with individuals involved in antisocial behaviour. In 2020, we issued 66 antisocial behaviour warning letters, 24 premises closure warning notices were served, 5 criminal behaviour orders were issued, and 9 premises were closed under antisocial behaviour legislation. All of this takes an incredible amount of work from Kevin and the team, but it's vital, and we will not tolerate antisocial behaviour in the borough. Dave Boxall is our dedicated rural crime officer. We police a beautiful world here in Surrey, with large rural spaces, whose owners can sometimes become victims of crime. Dave works closely with the rural community, overseeing all rural, wildlife and heritage crime in the borough and offering specialist advice to other officers in this area. We are also very lucky in Surrey Police to be supported by a fabulous team of volunteers. This year, the Waverley Specials, which is made up of a team of 1 special sergeant and 5 special constables, will be working with the Safer Neighbourhoods team on days of action, where they'll be concentrating on areas suffering antisocial behaviour, helping to execute warrants, and conducting speed enforcement in areas that are causing you a concern. And finally, we have your neighbourhood policing teams. These are your response officers and attend emergency calls, investigate crime, and conduct proactive patrols. The team is made up of 5 sergeants and 45 police constables who work a shift pattern providing 24/7 emergency response in Waverley. Until recently, the team worked at Guildford Police Station, and this quite rightly caused some of our local residents concern. However, I'm now pleased to say that they work permanently from Waverley Borough Council. So what have we been asking the teams to work on, and what are our priorities in 2021? 2020 was a difficult year, and 2021 will have its own challenges. As we continue to police the pandemic, we will ensure that we focus on crime and issues that affect you. So we'll be focusing on 4 main crime types. Firstly, burglary, which is a very impactful crime, not only on the victim, but also the local community. We've been working with our problem-solving team to identify hotspot areas and looking at why that area is a hotspot and what we can do to try and prevent any further offending. We are increasing patrols in those areas and using technology such as selector DNA to try and bring offenders to justice. We also need your help. Whilst we have seen a decrease in burglaries overall, we know that we are spending more times in our homes, and therefore we have seen a trend of shed and garage burglaries. And therefore we are asking everybody to review their shed and garage security and look at how you can improve it. Don't make it easier for burglars to steal your property. Antisocial behaviour is another very impactful crime. You should be safe and feel safe in your homes and outside in your community. Antisocial behaviour will not be tolerated in Waverley, and as previously stated, my team are working very hard to try and tackle this issue. I would encourage you all to report incidents of antisocial behaviour to us, as if we don't know it's happening, we can't help you and do anything about it. Domestic violence. Domestic violence affects people from all walks of life, and we've seen an increase in domestic violence during the pandemic, with people spending more time at home. The thought of not being safe in your own home is unbearable. Domestic violence affects people from all walks of life, and we have seen an increase in domestic violence during the pandemic, with people spending more time in their homes. The thought of not being safe in your own home is almost unbearable to think about. We are committed to improving our response to domestic violence by improving our investigations and working to safeguard survivors and deal with perpetrators. And hate crime. A hate crime can have a devastating impact on the victims and their families. I overview all hate crimes and incidents, and I have a dedicated sergeant who reviews and monitors all hate crime investigations. We have and continue to improve our response to this crime, and we continue to support our victims. Often, this crime goes unreported, and we encourage people to report this to us so that we can help put a stop to it. So, understanding our communities and solving problems. I want my team to not only understand the community and the issues in their area, but to work with you and our partner agencies to put long-term problem-solving plans in place to really tackle the issues. Understanding who and what makes up our community allows us to focus on how and what we deliver. Putting a problem-solving approach to issues means looking at a number of different elements as to why offences occur. For example, the environment. So looking at that environment and understanding why that particular area is having problems and what we can do to try and improve it. Looking at who is contributing to those issues and how we can work with them to prevent their offending. And looking at the victim, why are they a victim and how can we support them? We will be working with people who are intent on committing crimes within our communities. We'll be offering them support to change their ways, but we will also be using powers available to us to tackle their offending behaviour if necessary. And they certainly will know who their local police officers are. Improving our engagement and communication. I want my teams to be visible and accountable to you, and to look at new ways to communicate with our communities. We are already working on this, and for those of you that already follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Waverley Beat, I hope that you've noticed that we've been increasing our social media posts. My officers are out there doing it, and I want them to share it with you. A two-way conversation with our residents and their local officers is so important, and we've arranged our very first local live questions and answer sessions on Facebook, which will be advertised, so please do keep an eye out for it. This gives an opportunity for you to ask your local officers questions about issues that are affecting you and your neighbourhoods, and we'll be doing these sessions regularly. I understand that not everybody uses social media, and so we are looking at ways to communicate with those who may prefer a more traditional approach, and we'll also be looking at new initiatives to engage with our children and young people, and also local community organisations and community groups. I'd like to finish by saying a few thank yous. I'd like to thank our partner agencies who provide us with an incredible amount of support. I would also like to thank all of the Waverley policing teams who have been working under extremely difficult circumstances over the last 12 months, but continue to provide an excellent service to our community. And lastly, I would like to thank you, our residents, for your continued support. The sense of community that you have shown during the pandemic is admirable, and we look forward to working with you in the new year. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Sam. Now, the important bit. Over to you. Who's got the first question?
Good morning. I'm sorry, bad start. Good evening, and thanks everybody for tuning in. I'm David Munro. I'm Surrey's Police and Crime Commissioner. You've just heard presentations from three of us made a few days ago, but we're the same team here live. Me, David Munro, the Chief Constable of Surrey Police, Gavin Stevens, and the Borough Commander for Waverley, Inspector Sam Adcock. And also playing a very important part will be Sergeant Claire Sutherland, who will be answering some of your questions online, because we found in previous engagement meetings we've had more questions that we can deal with there, but we'll do the best we can. We're going to be on live now for 45 minutes, but at 6 o'clock prompt, we're going to stop proceedings because certainly we all here want to give a clap for the tragic death of Captain Sir Tom Moore, and I'm sure you want to do that yourself. But we've got time literally for one question, and the first one that came in for the Chief Constable: can you travel to support your bubble at half term? A COVID question.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. And I think we've had a few questions around support bubbles. So yes, if you're in a support bubble and that you do meet the requirements, then yes, you can travel as part of that at half term. If you want more detail on the requirements of support bubbles, we'll post that in the chat, but there's a really good page of advice on the gov.uk website. If you click on the COVID-19, what are the rules, then there's a page there all about support bubbles. But if you're in a bubble, then yes, you can travel to support each other in that bubble.
Thank you very much. And just as we come up to 6 o'clock, Chief, is there anything more quickly you would like to say about COVID enforcement generally?
Well, I know that we've got some questions coming up on COVID enforcement, and I guess the thing to say is just a huge thanks to the vast majority of our communities across Surrey who've absolutely done the right thing in getting us through the pandemic, and a particular thanks over recent days. I know it's not too far away from the where we're talking tonight, but across in Woking and soon to be Egham, the additional testing, the support that we've received from communities on that has been fantastic. So I'm just really grateful.
Absolutely, and I'd certainly confirm that from my perspective, Police as Crime Commissioner, I think Surrey Police have generally got the balance right between enforcing where they have to, but actually relying on the good sense of the vast majority of Surrey residents. So as we come up to 6 o'clock now, let's all take a break, please, and a hearty clap for Captain Sir Tom Moore. Thank you very much, and may he rest in peace. Now, question 2. In the light of coverage of police brutality during COVID, what's the force strategy? I'm going to ask the Chief Constable to answer this, but I do have to say, of course, I don't agree with the premise. There's not been police brutality, certainly not in Surrey and not nationally. But Chief, your call now.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. I guess just to put into perspective the amount of enforcement that we've done during the pandemic, we've issued 690 fixed penalty notices and just a few £10,000 fines, and that's because the majority of the public have exactly done the right thing. I was involved in the very early stages of the pandemic in my national role in agreeing the response that the police service would use, and we adopted these principles that we've called the 4 E's. You may have heard them referred to on the news and by politicians. What they mean is that our starting point is that we engage with our community members to find out why they're out and about. We explain to them the regulations and the law should they need some explanation. We encourage them to do the right thing, and it's only then, if none of that works, that we move to enforcement. And I have to say that 99% of the time the explanation, the encouragement works. We know, Sam's team knows that the people that push it to the limit, often they'll get arrested for something else anyway, and that's why we've had 690 tickets. But we've adopted a balanced approach because we know that we need the consent of the public to get through the pandemic, and we will get through it. And we're really keen to keep the great community relationships that we had before the pandemic and make them even stronger through our joint work together.
Thank you very much. Sam, is there anything you'd like to add from a particularly Waverley perspective?
No, I think I would just echo what the Chief has said, that we're very impressed with the way in which the community has responded. Yes, there are always going to be people that let us down, but we would just encourage people to follow the rules and the guidelines in order to keep not only yourself safe, but your own community safe.
Thank you very much. Now, following the recent highlight of rural crime, have you any data to show that the rate is falling and that detections are rising? Chief, again for you for a Surrey perspective, and then we'll go over to Inspector Adcock.
Yes, indeed. This was actually a topic that we covered in a performance meeting earlier in the week, and if you haven't seen, then the Commissioner and I do public performance meetings, which you can look up on the website and tune into. We talked about rural crime. The rural crime figures did go down last year, as quite a few categories of crime have done during the pandemic, most notably burglary. We've had 1,550 fewer burglary offences during the year. Rural crime was down to 3,610 offences. That was down from 4,471 the previous year. And our detection rate, the percentage of them that was solved during the course of last year was 19.5%, so just around one in five. To give an idea about a typical clear-up rate, forces across the country performance ranges normally between 12 and 18% for overall crime. So to have nearly 20% for rural crime is not bad going. Of course, we'd like to solve many more than that, but that's the figures to the end of the year last year.
Okay, thank you. And rural crime, Waverley's a very rural borough, got four towns, 3 towns and 1 village as well, of course. Sam? Yes,
absolutely. We've got a lovely area in Waverley. We were aware that the figures had gone up around rural crime, so we've done a lot of work around working with the communities. We've been training our officers and around how to record rural crime correctly, because there were some issues around our housekeeping, so that's been amended. And we've also got a dedicated rural crime officer as well, who works closely with the community. So he's local to my team, and he works really closely with our rural all of our rural community to, and he helps educate other officers. And also during the pandemic, restrictions allowing, he has been working with the community around saddle marking during Rural Crime Week.
Great, thank you. And could I say on rural crime, it's really important to me personally, and of course to the whole force. And this week is the week that I set the council tax precept, the police precept, and the budget. And I won't give away the punchline today, but I will say that I think people who share our view that rural crime is just as important should be quite pleased, because we're going to put more resources into rural crime. And we won't forget the towns either, I hasten to add, because there are going to be more police officers and more staff coming into our ranks, and they're being very badly needed. So that's good news. So thank you for that. Now, question 4, a very local one, concerning Farnham Recklesham Bridge. A number of strikes over the years. I used to be county councillor there, so know it well. And bridge strikes, and tragically a death about some time ago, but a death is a death, and HGVs overturning at the bridge. And the specific question is, we may not be able to answer it, but I'll highlight it anyway. How many prosecutions have taken place for dangerous driving and HGVs striking the bridge? Sam, I don't know whether you've got that at your fingertips. I wouldn't be at all surprised if you haven't, but we can give an answer. Take it away and give an answer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm aware that there's historic issues around HGV usage in Farnham in general, and there is some work going on in the background around that, which you will be aware of, Mr. Munro. But no, I don't have those figures in relation to the actual prosecutions, but happy to collate them, and we'll publish them on at Waverley Beat.
Good. Thank you very much indeed. I do know from personal experience, it's a real problem at Recklesham. All the notices in the world don't seem to deter the minority of drivers who simply either don't know or don't care about the height of their own vehicle. And there's been 2 deaths on that stretch, to my certain knowledge, one caused directly by a bridge strike. So thank you for raising that issue, and we haven't heard the last of it. Now, question 5 from someone in Cranley. We've had issues with Nottingham knockers. They are knocking on doors, not keeping their distance, and some are very aggressive. If we report to 101, which I hope you do, will the police deal with it? And there's a related question. Will anything be done about Nottingham knockers breaking the COVID regs? And Sam, I think this is probably one for you, but Chief, you may want to give a Surrey-wide perspective as well.
Well, just a very quick perspective before sort of Sam comes in on the local Rushmore and Cranley issues. When we deal with people for other offences, so for theft offences or some criminal matter, we tend not to double up on the COVID fines. That was a sort of national policy decision that was taken early on. That's not always the case. We sometimes do. If it's just the breach of the COVID regs and the 4Es are not working, we move to enforcement, then of course they will get a ticket. On Nottingham knockers or any suspicious callers for that matter, I mean, that's a phrase that's sometimes used. It's really important that you let us know about those, because we can look for patterns and trends, and particularly if you get registration numbers, for example, that's helpful to us. But Sam, if you want to come in on the sort of Rushmore and Cranley issues.
Yeah, absolutely. As the Chief has said, Nottingham knockers can sometimes be used to describe a multitude of people that knock at your door. I mean, absolutely, during the current times, we would like to know about that. And as the Chief said, what we would encourage is there any vehicles that are attached to them, any intelligence that we could pick up as well. But yes, please do report it to us either via 101 or via our online systems. And there's also a live chat feature as well. And we will absolutely get out to whatever we can. But we obviously do have to work on a grading system. But anything that is reported in is looked at by my team, and we try and build an intelligence picture around these kind of issues.
Thank you very much indeed for that. Now, a rise in dog thefts. I've certainly heard about that before. What's the procedure if your dog or somebody else's dog is stolen? What should you do, and how will the police respond? Chief, are you a dog theft expert?
Then hand over to Sam, and I know there's been discussion in the chat panel going on that as too. There have been a number of investigations across the county for dog theft, and we work very closely with our colleagues across the border in Sussex as well, and I know that they were tackling this particular issue with some of their rural crime officers recently. Of course, there's been a big demand for pets during the pandemic, and that's driven up the price of dogs in particular, and hence the theft. But Sam, are you aware of offences locally that have been problematic?
We've had a couple of reported offences, one of which may have been a mistake in that the dog went loose and was taken home. But a full investigation will always be done around all dog thefts. They're treated as a theft like any other incident, and we will follow all lines of inquiry around them. But nothing. I wouldn't say it's a trend or a big issue in Waverley, but we're certainly keeping an eye out for it to make sure it doesn't become one.
And the motto, of course, like all crimes, is report, report, report. And we can't solve all crimes, alas, but if the force don't even know about them, then we don't stand a chance. So thank you very much for that. That's an interesting question. What consumes most police resources in Surrey? And fraud no longer appears to be recorded. I can give you a one-sentence answer. What consumes most resources is people. The vast majority of your council tax and the money for Surrey Police, it's $250 million this year, goes on police officers, operational staff. But let's have some more detail on that, Chief Constable.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. I guess there's two ways of reading this question. What does the money get spent on? Definitely people. A big part of the budget, or what is the most demand for policing? I'll answer it from that perspective as well. So fraud is recorded. It's recorded through a national system, Action Fraud. So if you're reporting in a fraud to the local number here in Surrey, then you'll be redirected to Action Fraud. The reason for that is because fraud is often coordinated nationally and internationally, and they do assessments then to work with national law enforcement and international law enforcement agencies to cut off some of those frauds at source. So I'm aware of one recently where the origin of it was out in Barcelona. It was a call centre in a basement, for want of a better effect, that was generating financial-based calls and emails to fraud victims. It's actually not crime that consumes the most police resources. So here in Surrey, we take about 1,000 or 1,100 calls for service every day on our 999 and 101 system, and then a few more hundred digital contacts. Only about 10 to 15% of that relates to crime, maybe another 10 antisocial behaviour. But the biggest majority of what we spend on our time on is what could be called health and social welfare. So up to half of police time is spent on concerns for safety, maybe with the elderly or missing young people, vulnerability. So generally looking after our communities in times of need, those health and social welfare issues consume more police time than crime. Now, that's always been the case in my 25-year career, but of course what gets reported and talked about is always the crime side of things.
Yes, indeed. And since the questioner mentioned fraud, if I can say, it's my personal view, but it's shared by a lot of people, I think the whole national system for tackling fraud, especially cyber fraud, needs a radical overhaul. And this is no criticism whatsoever of Surrey Police, quite the contrary. But I don't believe fraud should sit with county police forces. There should be a national response. Fraud is national now, especially cyber fraud, indeed international, and we need something, we need to get better at it, despite the heroic efforts by a lot of people in Surrey Police, and I know that at first hand. So I'm not holding my breath, but certainly made representations to government. Right now, the next question is, since our agreement as council taxpayers for increased council tax to cover costs of extra police, how many have been recruited? I think that's one for you, Chief. How many have you got under your command now? And operational staff as well, of course.
Yeah, well, I gave some of the figures about the recruitment in the little introductory video. So up to November, I think it was 268 that we recruited. We had another 54 start in January too. Of course, we have to recruit more than just the uplift because of the sort of normal retirements and so on. What I can say is that the training teams have never been busier. We are on track for the end of this financial or performance year to meet the commitments of both the extra officers from the national uplift, the 20,000 additional officers nationally, and also those coming from the local precept as well. So making really good progress. If I can, I'll get the exact numbers posted online before the end of the session.
That's great. And one thing I've heard often, very understandably, said, look, we paid our council tax, started paying that last year. And you say you've got extra police and staff. I haven't seen them yet. What's happening? And the answer is many of them are actually out on the streets in our communities as we speak, but many are still in training, because it does take time to recruit and train, but they will all be there. And I'll say, if my precept proposals are accepted, there's much more to come. There's 73 police officers from Boris's Bobbies, so-called, and they will start to be recruited, and another 77 paid for by the precept. That's both officers and staff. Again, you won't see them immediately. Takes a bit of time get them trained, but there will be a substantial uplift, and that I know from the consultations responses is exactly what people want to see, and I agree with them. Now,
Mr. Munro, what I will say locally is that we have doubled our neighbourhood specialist officers. So instead of having 2, we've now got 4, which means I can dedicate 1 to each of the areas. And we've also doubled our youth engagement officers as well to try and divert young people away from the criminal justice system. So I can just assure people that the investment in the numbers we are seeing on the local teams as well.
Great.
Thanks, Sam. And I've got the figures in front of me now. So as at the end of November of last year, with 2,061 police officers, we had 134 special constables volunteering for us, and 153 police community support officers.
Good. Thank you very much indeed. And the drive now is to get them out there doing their job, and that is the highest priority at the moment. Now, question 9, how is Surrey residents' satisfaction assessed? Chief, that's for you, I think.
Yeah, so I'll talk about satisfaction and also about confidence as well. So, and give a distinction between the two. So we measure the confidence of all residents across Surrey by a survey. So many of whom may not have had contact with the police, but nevertheless, we need to know whether we've got their confidence. That's a survey that we've done for over 20 years now, along with local authorities. It's called the Joint Neighbourhood Survey, and we ask questions in there about, do you think you'll be treated fairly by the police, and do you have confidence that we understand the issues in your local area? What's your overall confidence level in policing? I'm pleased to say that on those confidence figures, the independent survey shows that that's typically high 80s, low 90%, and in fact during wave 1 of the pandemic it went up to 91.9%. So I'm so grateful for community support on that. Coming to satisfaction, which is a measure of if you've had contact with us for whatever reason, you've reported some antisocial behaviour or a crime, what's your satisfaction of that service like? We do that through a text message survey. So you'd be selected to get text messages, you'd be asked a series of questions in that. It's a really good system because it means that people can type in free text, and that free text can get directly back to the officer that's dealing with the case, and they will see those comments. It's measured on a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 is good, 1 is poor, and the satisfaction rates At the moment, we're about 3.69 out of 5, so in the sort of high 60s%. Now, you may think, well, it should be higher than that. We deal with some very, very difficult cases. So to get satisfaction rates in the high 60s or towards 70% in policing terms is not bad going.
Thank you. And it's one of the key indicators that I look at in my job, my key job of actually scrutinising Surrey Police, holding them to account on behalf of residents. And I have to say they haven't fluctuated all that much in the last 4 years. They have year on year, some of them been up, some of them been down, but they stayed, I think, astonishingly high. And I'm really, of course, really pleased about it. But it's crucial. The British policing model is policing by consent. I think we've got that in Surrey generally. Now, question 10, public sector equality duty. Very disturbed, says the questioner, at the lack of understanding with the police, especially the Chief Constable's involvement in making unilateral decisions that affected disabled people. What Equality Act knowledge are officers given? I've noticed very little. Chief, for you, and I'll probably sweep up on that.
Yeah, well, I'm very sorry to hear that the questioner thinks I've made a unilateral decision that's affected somebody directly. So if you want to make contact with me directly outside of this meeting, more than happy to pick up the conversation and see what's going on behind that question. We all officers and staff do get training in the Equality Act, so there'll be input into that. We have a unit not only within our learning and development team, but also a diversity directorate that supports us with our understanding. And on my behalf, the Deputy Chief Constable chairs a force level board looking at all of the issues around inclusion and equality. We have a real ambition to be a properly inclusive employer where everybody can bring their full self to work, and we get the best out of everybody's talents. And disabled colleagues are more than welcome in Surrey Police. So if there's something more to follow up on, then I'm more than happy to do that.
Thank you very much. I think you said it all there. Question 11 then. Many residents have been hit hard emotionally and financially. What relief can you give hard hit families? Do you think you have made all the savings you can? And I think I'll start, but Chief, you'll have got your views, of course. When I came into office 4 years ago, the message was very clearly that there must be savings every single year. There are always savings to be made. Things change. There's always the potential to move resources from one area to another. And I'm pleased to say Surrey Police have made substantial savings. They've had to over the last decade as the money has dried up. But we're not complacent. There are more savings to go, and there's a relentless search, because I have to, if I'm to look taxpayers in the eye and ask for money, I need to assure them that every pound is well spent. I think it is, but we can do even better. There's no doubt about that. Chief.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. We're always looking to get efficiencies in the work that we do. So in this year, we've taken many millions of efficiency savings out of the budget. That comes from a range of different places. So renegotiation of big IT contracts, for example, removement of sort of redundant processes, trying to find more efficient ways to do things. Of course, we've got a big responsibility to the environment and trying to reduce how much we spend on energy and fleet and transport, for example. We've definitely seen that reduce over the course of the last year, and accepted that some of that will be the pandemic effect. So it's inbuilt really for us to look at getting the best value for money, because I, as the Chief, want to make sure that as much as the budget as possible is going towards providing an operation policing service to our residents. Of course, you can't do without any support, because you need support to get investigations before the court, for example, or to put on events like this where we can have good dialogue. But nevertheless, we want to keep that as small as we can.
Thank you. And if I could say, Sam, I was on my Twitter account earlier this afternoon, and I saw a picture someone had posted of a huge line of police cars in your headquarters at Godalming, and that's a question I get quite often, actually. Have we gone over the top in the number of squad cars? There seem so many, and so just to reassure you, there is a major a project going on at the moment to make quite sure that we are not wasting resources there. And the key, I think, Chief, as you confirm, is each squad car doing the right amount of mileage, and that's something we're looking at particularly.
That's right. Yeah, and we've got a vehicle telematics program, so we can track exactly what mileage and what distances they're covering to make sure that we get the best out of the fleet.
Thank you very much. Now, a council tax, the question's in two parts. It does seem insensitive to ask for more funds right now, especially when we are expecting a maximum increase in council tax of 5%. Why do you think this is justified? And I'll answer that, of course, that's my responsibility. And then there's another part dealing with a more local issue. I'm going to be announcing my recommendation to my police and crime panel on Friday of what the increase in preset will be. But it's looking like an increase of £15 a year on a Band D property, £1.25 a month. And why do I think, I should say that is the maximum that the government are allowing us. Increasing the council tax worries me for several reasons. One is the obvious one, particularly in this very difficult time, people are very strapped for cash, and any increase will hit them hard. So it's not something I take lightly at all. And the other reason, peculiar to Surrey, is that in this county, police funding is heavily weighted to be provided by the council taxpayer rather than taxation from central government. And I've also taken that up with government. But don't hold your breath, I'm afraid. It has to be done in the context of a major review of police funding. But we do recognise the problems. So why do I think 5%, 5.5% is justified? If this goes through, you will be getting a lot for it. In particular, you're going to get 77 officers and staff. There'll be more officers and operational staff on your streets and your communities, more people who will be looking at crime solving, and we can do better on crime solving, more people who will be able to look at the data and to see what the demand is so we can have officers and staff in the right place and the right time. All of it frontline policing. I'm not going to be recruiting any back office staff, anything like that. They'll all be out there doing what you pay them to do. Chief, would you like to say something on that particular point before we go local?
Well, only that from a force perspective, we obviously think very carefully about the submissions that we make to you about the increases that we need, and we base that on the views that we get from residents at events like this as well, and how we assess where we would like to improve performance. So we know that it's a tough time for people. Many of our colleagues live in the county as well. There's a pay freeze coming up in policing and other public services. So we only make sure that we ask for what we think we need in order to keep the county safe and feeling safe.
Thank you. And I may say there's a consultation running at the moment. Got 2 days to go. It closes at 9 o'clock on Friday morning. Get onto my website. Please reply. If you haven't responded already, we want to hear from you. Thank you very much. Now, it's a question also asking, how has crime increased? Let's take that in a Waverley context. And what are you able to do to resolve teenage hooligans in Farncombe? And that's an issue which is very well known to me and, of course, to the local police.
Yes, absolutely. So our total, our overall crime has actually decreased by 8.5%. It's very difficult for us at the moment to measure ASB in what we would class as what ASB was maybe a year, 18 months ago, because coronavirus incidents are classed as antisocial behaviour for our recording purposes. So we have seen an increase in antisocial behaviour, but actually the feedback that we're getting from our residents is that isn't what I would class as true ASB. In relation to Farncombe, I joined the team in September last year, and I'm aware that there's historic issues that have gone around the town. Sergeant Sutherland, who's been answering some of your questions tonight, has actually been heavily involved in what we call a task and finish group, which is a group of people that get together, partner agencies, local volunteers, and community all coming together to work out how we can solve that problem. So actually there was some really good work that came in, which with everything COVID has stopped, but local cafes were going to be opening up in the evening to help to allow somewhere for the young people to go. There was some local companies that were going to help to rebuild some go-karts. So there was lots of things that were going on, and the project was just about to start, and then COVID has hit us. So what we are in now is a position that should those problems arise for Farncombe again, that we can press play and start with everything that we'd already had in our back pocket, so to speak, with all the work that Sergeant Sutherland and the Godalming team have done. What I would also say is obviously with our increase of officers, we've now got Chris Skillicorn-Aston, who is your dedicated neighbourhood specialist officer for Godalming and Farncombe, and he's a really experienced officer who spent 10 years as a neighbourhood officer in Farnham. So we're in a really good position. Once the restrictions are lifted, we're hoping that the issues don't come back, but if they do, we are ready and waiting to deal with them.
Thank you very much, Sam. And before your time, but I went to a very well attended community meeting. I think it was 18 months ago now. Lots of interesting suggestions. There's real community concern there. There's no doubt about that. But I do know that Waverley Borough Council, Godalming Town Council, of course Surrey Police, and others, charities, really trying to solve that, and I'm confident that they will. So thank you very much for that. I'm in no doubt that is really concerning the communities, and indeed the local MP, Jeremy Hunt, has been in correspondence with me as well. In fact, we visited the site together. So why is the police excuse me, increase 5.5% when the fire brigade precept is increasing by 2%? I can't answer that directly, I'm afraid. I've told you the reasons for 5.5%. The fire rescue service is under the control of Surrey County Council, so I don't know what judgments they have come, but we're completely separate precepting authorities. Now, interesting that Surrey is apparently the safest county in the southeast. Yes. Who makes this judgment, and what are the criteria? Chief, this is for you.
Yeah, well, there are a number of ways of answering this question. Referring to the presentation I gave at the beginning about being the safest in the southeast, we take that from the crime survey for England and Wales. So this is something that's conducted by the Home Office. The force has no influence over that at all. And those figures are not reliant on crimes that are reported either. So this is an independent survey which asks whether people have been the victim of crime or not. So it's a victimisation survey, and it's in that survey that Surrey's shown to have the lowest rate of victimisation in the southeast, and the sixth safest in England and Wales, which we're very proud of those low crime levels, because obviously we border the capital city, and we've got busy motorway networks and proximity to the south coast and so on. Aside from that, though, in performance terms, I look at lots of other measures as to how we're keeping the county safe. So we look at reported crime. In particular, we look at those crimes that cause particular harm. One of the questions earlier was about satisfaction. And of course, there are also other things that make up safety, like deaths and serious injuries on our roads. So each month we have a very detailed meeting where we look at a whole range of measures on safety, and where there are comparisons available, try and compare the performance to other forces as well to see how we're doing. So the simple answer is crime survey for England and Wales, but we look at much more besides to make sure that we're doing the best for local residents.
Thank you. And again, it's something that I look at very carefully regularly. But Surrey is a safe county. We've got to keep pushing that message out. Of course, there's crime. There's crime that needs solving and needs solving fast. But generally speaking, we are blessed to be living in a safe county. Thank you. Question 15. A very important issue. Chief Constable says that the crime detection rate is not good enough. I would agree with that. What is the current detection rate, please, and what can be done to improve it? Chief, I think if you start, and then I want to say my pennyworth, and something from the local perspective too.
Yeah, excellent question. When we talk about detection, let's think about crimes being solved. And when we investigate a crime, the Home Office have 21 different categories as to how that crime can be resolved at the end of it. And a subset of those categories are considered for the crime to be solved. Now, it's important to note that in many more of those cases, we will have a good idea who's committed the crime. We'll have strong intelligence. We may have even had interaction with the suspect, for example, but may not be able to resolve it as being solved. So sometimes we get questions about offenders getting away with it, and it's a little bit more nuanced than that. In terms of the numbers, we detect well over 10,000 offences every year. In percentage terms of the overall crime, I've just checked the figures, it currently stands at 14.8%, which is why we want to be better at it. A typical range for a force is between 12 and 18%. So we're sort of mid-table, but we want to be towards the top of the table. What can be done to improve it? Well, a number of things. So firstly, investigative skills. During the 10 years of austerity, we had lots of very skilled colleagues join us. We've had fantastic new colleagues join us, but of course, we need more of them to choose careers as a detective and to undergo the specialist training to get those skills, which are really quite complicated now. I mean, if I give just one example, we're more likely now to progress the case through digital forensic evidence than maybe physical forensic evidence. So if you think about the skills involved in investigating communications around a mobile phone, what data might be on there, processing that, the analytical work that needs to go with it, even the simplest of crime now can be quite complicated, which is why we're investing in software platforms that allow us and the community to load digital evidence into the cloud, for example. So a whole range of things really about skills and technology. We're working very hard on all of those fronts because we definitely want to make it a harder place for offenders to commit crime in Surrey and increase their chances of getting caught and brought to justice.
Yeah. Sam, before I round off, what's the crime detection like in Waverley?
Yeah, so I'm responsible for performance across the borough, so I absolutely take it personally when what our figures are looking like. I suppose my job in relation to the detection rates, so to speak, are I really impart on my team the importance of the quality of an investigation and getting it right the first time. So when we go there initially, are we getting everything that we need? We don't want to be sending officers back, but equally, I'm happy to hold officers to account for that and ensure that proper training is put in place if we're identifying local issues. But also we're looking at learning as well, and we've actually set up local learning boards so that if we do particularly well in an investigation, then we will share that. If we learn stuff from an investigation, we'll also share that. And also what I would say is that we're, heavily investing in problem solving, and we've got a problem solving team. So we're really looking at how we can investigate things differently as well. So getting down into the crux of why stuff is happening, and what we can do to prevent that in the future.
Thank you very much. It's one of my 3 top priorities for next year is to up the crime solving rate. It's okay, but Surrey Police don't just rest on their laurels for being okay. They want to be much better than okay. A lot of the resources coming in will be devoted specifically to upping that crime solving rate, and I look to the force, of course, and so do they, that we want to make significant improvements there. We owe it to residents. Question 16 on drugs. Some evidence of drug substance abuse in my local area, which borders Hampshire. It may be that we're experiencing some county lines trafficking going on. I'm sure you are. And the evidence is mainly small gas bottles and alcohol receptacles, and particular concern about supplying drugs to school kids leaving school. Sam, what about what you're doing locally to tackle drugs?
Yeah, so protecting the most vulnerable in our society is obviously, very high on our agenda. And our young people are being used in county lines, and we absolutely are aware of that problem. My youth engagement officers are actually doing a youth project within schools to highlight county lines, and the problems around it, but also trying to work with our partners as well to get the message out to them and how we can all work together. What I would say to the person that's put that question in is please do give us a call or report that via Crime Stoppers with all the details, around the exact locations, any registration numbers, and so that we can pick that up with not only us but with Hampshire as well.
Thank you, Chief. From drugs right at the heart of your plans, of course.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think Sam's covered all the key issues there.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, very top 17. Surrey Police have told parish councils and residents' associations that coronavirus regs prohibit volunteers from delivering newsletters or putting up notice because they're not essential in these lockdown days. There's a query about the legal advice, the Crime Prosecution Service legal advice published last year. The questioner says no legal basis for such statements. Has this advice been withdrawn? Generalise that slightly. Is it okay? It's not okay to deliver political leaflets. The government has made that very clear. How about other leaflets done on a voluntary basis, Chief?
Yeah, we've got lots of queries about this, and of course many people look at the detail of the regulations that talk about volunteering and say that, well, this is part of volunteering, then it's okay. The advice that we're working on at the national level is that it's not and of course this is ever so difficult, isn't it, because a lot of this legislation was drafted very quickly. The original intent of the volunteering clauses was about the provision of essential services during the pandemic, so things like domestic abuse outreach services, food and medicine deliveries to the vulnerable, those sorts of things. I'd say, is it really essential that you deliver that newsletter? And the view is that it's not. Aside from the regulations and the law, and we could debate that, I'd also just ask the question that each and every one of us is being asked to behave as if we have the virus because of all of the asymptomatic transmission. And would you really then, if you have the virus, go door to door around your local neighbourhood, putting materials through the door that could potentially contain the virus? And my argument to that is surely not. So I'd really ask people to refrain whilst we're in the midst of this current lockdown. It's ever so important that we keep on top of the infections to prevent serious illness and loss of life.
Yes, thank you very much for that. I do agree with the question, or the implication is the advice is not as clear as it could be. I don't think it is. I have read it, and it can be expanded. And I have only today urgently asked my professional association to go to government and get that advice clarified as soon as possible. As the Chief Constable said, it is causing concern and in some people's minds confusion about that. Thank you very much. Now, how are we doing? We've got 2 minutes left. Waverley, a very rural borough, wildlife crime is an issue. Some of the environmental laws are unenforceable. How can this be addressed? And fairly briefly, please, Chief, I think this is yours.
Well, I'll just say that we want to invest more in rural and wildlife crime at a force level, and I know Sam has access to specialist resources locally, so maybe she can make the link and introduce those.
Yeah, absolutely. With as I said earlier, we've got a dedicated rural police community support officer, and they work heavily with lots of organisations like the Forestry Commissioner, local charities. I'll be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure on sort of what environmental laws you're discussing, but certainly if you want to email us with the email address that comes at the end of it, I will send that to the rural PCSO for him to answer any of your questions specifically.
Thank you very much indeed. And I think we've got time for one more question. Question 20. Burglary has been a problem. I beg your pardon, well, two more questions. I was jumping. Question 19. Do you gain intelligence from the crimes reported on social media? Answer yes, but I'm sure we can expand on that.
Yeah, most definitely. So you can make contact with Surrey Police 365 days a year, 24/7 on all social media platforms now. Both through a private message or a public message, and we will act on that in the same way as if you picked up the phone and called us. And I know that Sam's team as well will be picking up good information and community intelligence from the social media feeds that they can build into their patrol plans.
Thank you. And the motto is, it's been said earlier, report, report, report. There's all sorts of ways you can do it. If we don't know about it, we can't do anything about it. Now, it is the last question now. Burglary has been a problem for residents on the periphery of Godalming. What's the best strategy for residents to prevent such a crime? Sam, what would your advice be when your residents come up and speak to you?
Yeah, so in relation to domestic burglaries, we have actually seen a decrease of 39%, which we know that, yes, we are working very hard around burglary, but with people spending more time indoors, we have seen that decrease of what we would class as, a dwelling burglary, as in, someone coming into your house. But what we are seeing is an increase in shed and garage breaks, and that is, across the force. So what we're really encouraging people to do is to go down to your shed and have a look at what security is already in place. Quite often people put a padlock on it, but actually a padlock can easily be knocked off or cut off. So really have a look at ways in which you can protect your property. And what I would also like people to do is to start thinking a little bit differently about the property that's in your shed. So I would ask the question is, if you had £1,000 in cash, would you leave that in an insecure shed? I would suggest that the answer will be no, yet we quite often will leave a £2,000, £3,000 bike in your shed. So just go, we put a lot of money and investment into security in our house. So I would just encourage people to go down and do the same in their sheds and garages.
Good, thank you very much. We've come to the end of the session. I do appreciate there's still more questions to come, and I'm sorry we won't be able to answer them in public, but can I just reassure the questioners, we will come back to people on an individual basis after this session to answer their questions. So all I need to do then is to say thank you to everybody for the questions and for tuning in. Thank you to Sam, Chief Constable, and Claire in the background there, and to say good night and cheerio.
Thank you all.